Hey guys, Assalamu alaikum, it's the Full Metal Theist here. Okay, so who is the best in the Dawah scene, Christianity-wise? To be honest, I believe it's kind of a flawed comparison to make because we have a variety of brothers, mashallah, and they are all doing some really good work. So this was kind of a clickbaity title, but I really want to show you something interesting, and that is why I wanted to catch your attention. So let's say I'm going to tell you who is my favorite. Honorable mention to Zakir Hussain and Ijaz the Trini. I really respect these two brothers. I see their effort, their studies. They're really doing a good job. When it comes to my favorite, I want to introduce today someone who's called Jake Bracantella. He's a brother, Muslim philosopher, currently pursuing a PhD in Christology. So he's someone really doing the studies, really putting the effort. He's debated already many Christian scholars, and I really love his work for one specific reason. It's quite different from the usual Muslim polemics on Christianity. And the usual is like textual criticism. That's pretty much it. Let's look at the thing in the Bible, let's check the historicity of the Bible, and that's all legit, all genuine. But the thing is that Jay comes up with something new, and that something new is mainly theology. It's mainly metaphysics. What is wrong with the Trinity, the logical problem with the Trinity? And I'm not just talking about the how can three be one. Come on, guys, we need to up the game a little bit, okay? And this is what Jake is doing. He really discusses and does a deep dive into Christian doctrines, okay? And he looks at them from a philosophical perspective. So without further ado, I want to show you a snippet of his work. Check this out. Enjoy. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. I'm the Muslim metaphysician, and today I'm here to talk to you guys about the logical problem of the incarnation. Now, I know with my last video that I posted on the logical problem of the Trinity, some people were honestly a bit confused about my video. That video was not meant as a refutation of Christianity, or even on the logical problem of the Trinity was not meant as a refutation of the Trinity itself. It merely was a description of what the problem actually is, and then going forward, I will be taking a look at some proposed solutions by Christian philosophers to the logical problem of the Trinity. Now, it's going to be the same way here, folks. This is not a refutation of the doctrine of the incarnation. It is merely a example or description of what the logical problem of the incarnation is. Okay, so I want you guys to really understand that, Muslim, Christian, or otherwise alike. Okay, so my goal for this video is to familiarize the audience with the description of what the actual logical problem of the incarnation is. Okay, as long as we're clear on that, we shouldn't have any problems. The reason why is this is going to be a part of my series on the incarnation called Investigating the Incarnation. Now, in the previous video I posted was a description of what the doctrine of the incarnation is. In this video, I'm going to be explaining what the logical problem of the incarnation is that falls out of the doctrine. Okay, and then in future videos after this one, I'm going to be going through possible solutions to the problem and analyzing them for their potential strengths and weaknesses at resolving the problem. Now, like I said, in the previous video, I briefly explained what the incarnation is. So if you haven't watched that yet, I suggest you pause the video, go back and watch the video on the incarnation, and then resume here where you left off so that you'll have an understanding of what the doctrine is if you don't already. Okay, so there's an important issue that I have to address before I explain what the doctrine of the incarnation, or what the logical problem of the incarnation is. And that issue is the difference between mystery and a logical contradiction. Now, Christians frequently appeal to mystery when these logical problems are presented. But what they have to understand is that there's a difference between a mystery and a logical contradiction. Now, ultimately, as Muslims or as a theist, I would agree with you that we cannot completely comprehend the nature of God, and there's always going to be an element of unknowability about God and his nature. However, any theological system that is meant to be taken seriously needs to seek to avoid contradictory statements about the divine. Okay, so when posed with accusations of contradictions, believers should at minimum seek to alleviate the contradictions by proposing something that is logically possible. Now, it doesn't have to be actually the case and explaining exactly how God is, but you must either show why the quote-unquote logical problem isn't a logical problem to begin with, or say, well, it looks like a logical problem and it is, but here's the solution to it. That's what you have to do. You can't just appeal to mystery, because mystery doesn't actually solve the problem. The issue is not what we don't know about God. It's statements that you do know about God and that you are claiming that what appear to result in a logical contradiction. And by logical contradiction, I mean something that is impossible, like a square circle or a married bachelor. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, what actually is the logical problem of the incarnation? what I'm going to explain to you guys is very simple if you just pay close attention and listen, okay? So this is a legitimate problem. It is not an issue that is brought up or raised by skeptics, okay? So I'm going to show that this is not Jake as a Muslim or a skeptic that is simply proposing what this logical problem of the incarnation is. I'm going to give two quotes from two well-known theologians of the 20th and 21st century on the incarnation that are going to get us kick-started about what the logical problem of the about what the logical problem of the incarnation actually is. So, according to the theologian Herbert Maurice Relton, he says, and I quote, "The person of Christ is the bankruptcy of logic." Okay? This is not Jake. This is a Christian theologian saying that the person of Christ, speaking about the incarnation, is the bankruptcy of logic. Okay? Now, some of the most brilliant minds have struggled to understand the unity of two complete natures in a single person of Christ. Okay? Some of the most brilliant minds, even as Christians, have struggled to understand this. William Lane Craig, who's a contemporary Christian analytic philosopher, had this to say about the incarnation, and I quote, "But if anything appears to be a contradiction, surely this is it. How can Jesus be both God and man, infinite and finite, creator and creature? How can we unite in a single person both omniscience and ignorance, omnipotence and weakness, moral perfection and moral perfectibility? The attributes of deity seem to drive out the attributes of humanity, so that it seems logically inconsistent to affirm with the historic Christian church that Jesus is truly God and truly man." Now, these are two Christians telling you what the problem is. The first told you that the person of Christ is the bankruptcy of logic, and the second, William Lane Craig, is clearly explaining what the actual contradiction or what seems to be the logical problem of the incarnation actually is. So from this, we can see that this is not a problem suggested merely by skeptics. Rather, it has always been an issue that Christian theologians have recognized and at least sought to rationalize. So the problem arises out of the expression that Christ was truly God or fully God and truly or fully man. In other words, he was one person with two complete natures, divine and human. Why is this problematic, someone might ask? Well, just as a quote from William Lane Craig expresses, the idea is that typically we understand divinity, or what it means to be God, to entail certain necessary attributes. And some of these attributes are things like omniscience, omnipotence, omnibenevolence, eternality, aseity, immutability, etc. Anything that does not possess these attributes typically is understood not to be God. You can't be God unless you possess these attributes. That's the idea. On the other hand, human beings possess certain attributes that are essential for humanity. Things like being weak or limited in power, being ignorant or limited in knowledge, being bound by time, subject to change, dependent, etc. Now, these attributes that are essential to divinity and humanity seem to contradict one another. However, the doctrine of the incarnation tells us that Christ was a single person with both sets of attributes. The claim is that a single individual cannot be both omniscient and ignorant and weak and omnipotent at the same time, changeless and yet subject to change, etc. So the incarnation entails that a single subject or person possesses contradictory attributes and is therefore logically incoherent. This is the claim. This is what the logical problem of the incarnation actually is. So now, on the board behind me, guys, I have an explanation of what I've just explained in diagram format, and I'm going to go up to the board and briefly show you what exactly I mean here. So we have here the logical problem of the incarnation, all right, folks? Now, the person of Christ. Who is the person of Christ? Right here, I have a circle with a line going down the middle. Now, I know it's a crude example, and some Christians may not be happy with the actual diagram. That's okay, that's fine. It's just meant in a crude manner to show what I mean here by what the person of Christ is and what appears to be a contradiction, right? So, what appears to be a contradiction, guys, is the idea that Christ, the person of Christ, is this big circle. Now, going down the middle, we have a separation of the two natures, the divine nature and the human nature. In the divine nature, we have properties or attributes like omniscience, omnipotence, changelessness, eternality, and in the human nature, on the other side, we have polar opposite attributes like ignorance, weakness, subject to change, and are created. Now, here's a key point that we have to know. The only person or subject is Christ, which is this bubble as a whole. There's not two persons. This is not a person, this is not a person. The person refers to the totality, okay? All attributes in both categories, both in the divine nature and the human nature, okay, are predicated of the person of Christ, which is this whole bubble. So now this is the contradiction. How could one person, the person of Christ, be both omniscient and ignorant at the same time, be both omnipotent and weak at the same time, be both changeless and also subject to change, be both eternal and created at the same time? That's what the apparent contradiction is with, at least on one level of what the contradiction is with the incarnation or its logical incoherence. Now, there's another problem that is directly related to this, and that is this scriptural consideration regarding this.
And I'm going to stop it here. I guarantee the original video is not done. I just want to build some surprise, you know. And if you check the original, Jake goes on further explaining two more key issues with the Christian doctrine of the incarnation. It's really good stuff, guys. Okay? I'm exposing you to this guy because this is the one you should be learning from when it comes to Christian theology if you want to learn from a Muslim. He's incredibly humble, extremely charitable. He's got many debates with Christian scholars, okay? So make sure that you check the description box. I will provide you with all the links you need to reach out, Jake's channel, his Twitter, whatever. Go there and support him. Click the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and assalamu alaikum.